Hello, everyone, and good day. So, today's lecture is not about turning you into accountants, but it is about preventing you from becoming brilliant designers who cannot survive professionally. Design talent without financial literacy is really unsustainable in the long run. So, in this lecture, we will talk about money, not because design is about money. No, it's not about that, but because design practice will collapse without money. So, this lecture is not also about accounting formulas, it is about professional survival. You cannot be a brilliant designer and still fail if you do not understand how money moves through your work. So, by the end of today, you should think about finance the same way you think about materials or systems in your design work. Treat it as something you design, not just something that happens to you. Let me start with the hard truth. Most design practices do not really fail because the work or the designer is bad. They fail because the designers never learned how to manage money. Being busy is not the same as being sustainable. Having many projects does not mean you are financially healthy also. Design operates within a certain economic system, and ignoring money does not make your work more pure, but rather it makes you more vulnerable. So, this particular module treats finance as a design constraint or a design brief, if you will, not an enemy. So, if you remember nothing else today, remember this: creativity does not exempt you from economics. Okay, remember that one. Creativity does not exempt you from economics. When designers hear the word accounting, many shut down. So let me reframe it for you. Accounting is not punishment. Accounting is also not bureaucracy, but rather accounting is a, feedback system. So think of uh, accounting as something that gives you signals about whether your practice is healthy or if your practice is failing. Because if you refuse feedback, you will be designing blindly. Just like testing tells you if a design works, accounting can tell you if your practice is working. Because if you refuse to look at feedback, again, you will be designing blindly. Okay? So, accounting is a feedback. It is a good tool for you for decision making, and it is a sustainable measure. And no, it is not just merely bookkeeping, it's not only for corporations. It's not about complex math. Okay. Core accounting terms designers must know are the following: revenue. It is the total amount of income generated by the sale of goods and services. So basically, what comes into your business. Expense is the cost of operations that a company incurs to generate revenue. For example, your rent expense, your office supplies expense. Profit is the financial benefit realized when revenue exceeds your expenses, so meaning the money that remains with you. Asset is, or rather, are the resources with economic value that a business owns or controls. So it could be your machines, uh, printers. Liability is something a person or company owes. So usually a sum of money. Like for example, if you have a business loan, that can be a liability, and equity is the value of the shares being issued by the company. So it's actually assets minus the liabilities, and so that is what is left. And take note that cash, or rather profit, does not automatically mean cash. You can be profitable on paper, but at the end, you can still be broke. Okay, so having cash is also all about being liquid. There are only three financial documents that matter for designers. First is the income statement. It tells you how you have performed so far, if your studio made some money. Next is the balance sheet. It tells you where you stand currently. It shows your assets, your liabilities, and equity. And then third is your cash flow statement. It tells you if you can survive. It is actually the actual movement of cash. So your responsibility as a designer is really not to prepare all these documents, but rather your responsibility is to read them intelligently. Your job is interpretation, and it's not about you being able to compute all of these. So you must be able to look at financial information and diagnose these problems, just like reading a design brief. The income statement answers one question, and it is, did the studio make money over a period of time? It shows revenue, expenses, and your net income. So if your pricing is wrong, the income statement will show it. If your costs are out of control, then the income statement will also expose your costs. The income statement is about your performance over a period of time. It tells you if your pricing and cost control are working or failing. The balance sheet is also different. It is sort of like a financial snapshot. It asks where you are financially right now. You might see high revenue, but also you have this high debt. Also, you might see expensive equipment, but actually you do not have any cash. So many studios look successful on Instagram, but fragile on their balance sheet. A studio may look profitable yet be deeply in debt. The balance sheet reveals your structural strength or your weakness. The cash flow statement is the most important statement for survival. Studios do not die because they lack work, but they die because money rather comes in too late. Clients delay their payments. The rent, however, does not. It occurs monthly. So cash flow problems are timing problems and not really talent problems. Usually, cash flow is the silent killer of creative practices. So, let me describe to you a familiar situation. So, you have a designer who is always working, and then the designer is always tired, always stressed, yet still struggling financially. You could ask why. It could be underpricing, um, feeling very kind to clients, and then often means devaluing yourself, and then your project with your own future sustainability. So, underpricing is one. Ignoring your overhead is also another that causes you to struggle financially. And there's no proper separation between your personal and your business money. That is also one. A designer who does not have proper tax planning. And please take note that being busy is not necessarily um, equate to being successful. Sustainability, in the business is actually more of success, the definition of success. Of course, we know that every project has costs, whether you acknowledge these costs or not. So, say, for example, your materials, your prototyping, those can be costs, and labor. Yes, you need to include your labor costs, your overhead, and then do not forget your contingency, perhaps for costs that you may not uh, expect. So these are contingencies for risks. So if you do not list your costing, eventually you will still have to pay for it, and you just tend to pay for it invisibly. So if you do not price your own labor, you are subsidizing the project with your very life. So please do not forget to take these into account. Overhead for some can also be a silent killer, like your rent. Unnecessary software subscriptions can also be a silent killer, because if there's a cheaper alternative or perhaps an open source alternative, so try to make an inventory of the software that you subscribe to, internet, your equipment wear and tear. That can also be an overhead cost. So these costs exist even when project is active. So if your pricing ignores overhead costs, your studio is quietly bleeding. Pricing should not be a guessing game for designers. Pricing is all about judgment. It is based on time, the amount of time that you spend in designing. It is based on your expertise, especially if you have a degree or a certificate for that specific type of expertise, the risks and the value you give yourself. And pricing should also not be based on fear. It is also not based solely on what the client wants to pay. Um, Sometimes underpricing feels like the kind and sympathetic thing to do for your client, but in reality, it is often irresponsible. Pricing should be strategic judgment. You know, it should reflect how you understand your role and your responsibility as a design professional. Designers usually work under these four pricing models. First, we have the hourly rate. It can be something that's simple, transparent, but often punishes efficiency, and it also encourages micromanagement. And then you have the fixed fee. I would say it is a scheme that rewards efficiency but demands some absolute scope, of clarity. And then you have retainer. It stabilizes your income and builds long-term relationships, and it is best for a practice that is sustainable. And then you also have designers that earn on royalty basis. It is high risks, but it is also high reward. It The trades that come along with it are immediate, certainly for long-term potential in an IP-driven work. So for every item perhaps that you sell, you get royalties out of it. So choosing a model is a strategic decision. When you become a designer, you have to be strategic in choosing your pricing model. Each model, by the way, has ethical and practical implications, and I think no, there is really no single model that is best in all situations. So it usually, again, I'm as I mentioned, pricing comes with judgment. No, you being able to assess, what the best pricing scheme is for the nature of the project, the nature of the output, and the of course the current um, designer client relationship and agreement. Hourly pricing is simple and transparent, but it has its own trap because the faster and better you become, the less you also learn. Efficiency in this scheme is punished and micromanagement is encouraged, but that doesn't mean hourly pricing is entirely wrong, but it must be chosen carefully. Hourly pricing turns design into a labor for sale instead of value creation. Fixed fee pricing rewards efficiency but also demands some amount of clarity. If scope is unclear, conflict is guaranteed. Retainers are different because they stabilize income, they create long term relationships, and I would say it's the most sustainable creative uh, practices rely on a retainer fee Retainers are often also the most sustainable model for creative users. And then you have the royalty based pricing, which is the long term upside. It is IP driven pricing scheme, best use when you have or when you retain your intellectual property rights. You are, for example, licensing a design, but in here you're not really selling your label. um, so it is best applicable for products that are scalable, um, products that are mass produced, like furniture, lighting, consumer goods, where one design yields thousands of units. So for every pass sale for that particular item, you get a royalty payment. But in here, the income is delayed and sometimes it can be quite uncertain. One of the prerequisites for royalty based is that it requires a little bit of trust. It requires very detailed contracts. And yes, you have to wait for the market to buy your products, no? Because this will be the source of your royalty. An important caveat, rather, is that you should not accept royalties from a client who cannot promise or who cannot prove that they can sell the product at scale. Now let's talk about taxes. Um, you are taxable whether you like it or not, because in the Philippines, compliance is governed by the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or the BIR. Tax compliance is not just legal, but it is the profession. It is a professional protection. Tax compliance is also not about optional professionalism. It protects you legally and it protects you financially. Designers commonly encounter income tax. No, that's the most common, and then you have percentage tax or VAT, and you also have withholding tax. You are not expected to master filing yet, all of these, but you must understand what applies to you and why, because ignoring all of these can be very expensive because it might curtail some um, penalties. Receipts also are not paperwork for the sake of paperwork. They protect you legally, and issuing receipts establishes your credibility as a designer. They also allow disputes, if ever there are some, to be resolved professionally. I would say that professionals issue receipts. That is what will differentiate you from mere hobbyists. Registration also changes how clients see you. It affects taxes, it makes you legitimate, and it provides more opportunities uh, as a designer. So it is not just a legal decision, but to register is something that is strategic. Registration is a strategic decision, not just legal one. Design careers are rarely linear, I would say, because income can be irregular, especially if you are doing freelance work. Projects are also seasonal, and it can also depend on the current economy. Um, so sustainability of you for your design business actually requires a little bit of system, like perhaps having emergency funds, putting in clear boundaries for your design work or career, having predictable income streams. Um, for example, if you see yourself just doing a design works, perhaps you can have another income stream on the side. It could be something that's related to your design work, like putting up products on a certain website as another alternative for income stream, and not just designing or perhaps uploading videos talking about design, or publishing a book about design, because oftentimes freedom without a certain amount of structure leads a designer to burn out. Having all these financial systems in place gives you resilience and gives provides sustainability for your design work. Take note that unethical pricing hurts everyone in the industry. Unethical pricing also leads to exhaustion. It devalues the profession, not just yours, but the other professionals as well. So if you dive pricing, that will um, result to clients, no, undervaluing the design profession. It trains clients to exploit designers. Ethical pricing is not actually greed. It is being responsible. When you price properly, underpricing does not just harm you, but the I would say the entire design ecosystem. So please take note of the effects, no, of underpricing. It does not only affect you, but in doing so, you exploit the entire design industry. It makes the market think that this is only the value of what a designer deserves. So think about it. Design is creative work. Obviously, we already know about that, but practice is also a system. Professional practice is also a system. So if you want more creative freedom, you must design a system that supports your design practice. Okay. Again, if you want creative freedom, you must design the financial system that will support your creative business. And so, with that, I'll leave you with this question. Do you want to be a talented designer only who struggles? Or do you want to be a sustainable designer who is resilient and who will last? Yeah, given that your systems are in place, especially financial wise, no? And that choice begins with understanding how money can work for your business. So, again, I want you to treat finance as a design brief, just like how you treat materials, supply, or ergonomics. It is something also that you, as a designer, should also design, and it should be something that happens to you by chance or something that is unplanned. Okay, so treat finance also as a design brief. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day ahead. Goodbye.